not much is being published. Some bits are being leaked. Yesterday, I was talking to you about the fact that it's going to be hard to extract a lot about this deal, because the more information gets leaked, the more the actual deal is going to be difficult to reach, because Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want scrutiny. You saw this move. He agreed to allow aid into the Gaza Strip after a small cabinet meeting without putting the vote out. Therefore, he knows that if his cabinet members voted on it, that it will be rejected. Therefore, he did not allow a vote. So if more information is going to be released, he's going to be in more trouble. The only thing that he's doing is just sending hints. Like now this, of course, decision, blatant decision, tangible, implemented immediately with the current mechanism. Then the small kind of leak that, yeah, we're also talking about ending the war. As if it's normal for him to do such a huge U-turn from yesterday. This is how he operates. Whether it's the pressure or the lack of options for him to actually win, because it's impossible for Israel to win in Gaza. Then people, ladies and gentlemen, please, all of what Israel's doing is to cover up the huge failure. Let's be real here. The suffering of the people and imposing all of this punishment on the innocent people and the genocide and all of that to cover up a huge failure, to cover up the biggest failure in its history. The fact that it's still getting repeated blows with the same intensity and fierceness as day one from the Palestinian resistance. But there are some reports coming out, some leaks going out, and they're talking about the release of the Israeli prisoners of war in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Now, the Palestinian prisoners, this is where the numbers get really kind of not very accurate, but some reports are saying this. For example, Mako said Israel offered Hamas the release of more than 100 live prisoners in exchange for half of the hostages alive. And why I'm saying all of this is because other statements coming from Israeli officials said that, no, we actually didn't say that they must release half of the live hostages. Clearly, because the Palestinian resistance isn't intending to release only half of the live Israeli prisoners of war if we have a phase deal, as in a deal where you wouldn't have an immediate declaration that the war has ended, that aid will be going in, and that's it, and American reassurances and what have you. So this report here said, also part of the proposal, more than 1,000 prisoners who were arrested after the 7th of October will be released in exchange for half of the dead hostages or prisoners of war. That's apart from the 100 life sentences. So we're talking about heavy sentence Palestinian prisoners, some of them who were big figures in the Palestinian resistance. Also, according to the outline discussed in Doha, discussions will be held on ending the war without an Israeli commitment, but with international guarantees. How, you might ask, are these international guarantees going to come? I'll tell you more leaked reports of some of the Hamas demands, that the declaration will come from the Americans, from the American administration, and that Steve Witkoff will shake the hands of Khalil al-Hayya, who is one of the most leading figures in Hamas, to show that, well, we are in charge now, and we forced Israel to have this agreement, and we will guarantee the implementation of that agreement. And then you can go into all of the talk about, Donald Trump saying it's a free zone, it's going to be a free zone, and we're going to control it, and all of that. Lots of ambiguous stuff, of course. At the same time, according to this report, senior Hamas claimed this evening to CNN the organization agreed to the release of 79 Israeli hostages, or POWs, in exchange for a 60-day ceasefire and the release of 300 Palestinian prisoners. This report is fake. The report that they decided to release in exchange for only temporary ceasefire, later on the Palestinian side said that it's a fake report. We did not agree to another temporary ceasefire. We're talking about ending the war, and that is it. And as a matter of fact, similar statements were resonating and were confirmed also by officials from the United States administration and the Trump administration. Trump was saying, that's it, we need to end the war, Gaza people are suffering, we're going to care for them, we're going to be good to them, and that's it. So, clearly, the talks are surrounding ending the war, not just having another temporary ceasefire. And the big question is, will Benjamin Netanyahu, in this particular situation, have another large U-turn, like the one he did with the aid, and declare an all-out deal? Or will he say, no, we're not going to do that? Clearly, the man is capable of doing an outright U-turn without any regard to his cabinet and their refusal and their demand to go and vote for it. And he has the option to go and declare an all-out deal. Because if he declares an all-out deal, he will be handed all of the prisoners of war. That's something that the Palestinians, by the way, offered them on the 7th of October, just days after 7th of October. End of the operation, we'll have a deal, prisoner exchange. Israel, of course, refused, went out on the genocide, and continued to have this genocide in hope that they would try and kind of take down the Palestinian side altogether. But that clearly didn't work. Of course, also Al Arabiya reported that an Israeli official said that the war in Gaza is reaching towards an end. Now, the pressure is coming internally and externally. The United States, the internal Israeli problems, the escalating tensions. How is all of this being translated politically? Because Benjamin Netanyahu, well, he would want an image of victory. He would want an image of victory and say, look, we ended the war, but we have done so and so. We eliminated so much. We're never going to have another attack on us from Gaza. We're going to be secure for the rest of our life. However, that's of course being challenged. It's being challenged by many people. I guess where from? They're from Israel. So again, Israeli officer, he was talking to Channel 14 Israel. It's not clear what kind of victory we're talking about. We haven't achieved a complete victory over Hamas, and we haven't recovered all the hostages in Gaza. That is coming after very, very many statements by previous IDF major generals, previous heads of security intelligence and security establishment in Israel, talking about the fact that it's impossible to achieve what is called absolute victory over the Palestinians, for one very simple reason, that Israel attempted to do that before, yet Israel failed time after time. Israel said in 2008 they wanted to eliminate the Palestinian resistance. They did not. Israel claimed in 2012 that they wanted to eliminate the Palestinian resistance. They did not. Likewise in 2014. As a matter of fact, in 2008, they started to gradually change the objectives of the war to say, that we want to reduce the threat that's coming on us from Gaza, and we want to kind of prevent them from having the ability to attack us or to launch missiles on the state of Israel. Will they achieve that? Have they achieved that 18 months into a genocide, a full-blown genocide against the Palestinian people? Of course not. And actually, we had another confirmation today from Israel that, 2 rockets were fired from Gaza. Sirens in Kisufim, the area near Kisufim, that was coming from the Israeli Broadcasting Authority. Israel said that intercepted one of them, and one of them fell in an open area. The Israeli Home Front Command said that the air siren sounded in Kisufim due to rocket fire from the Gaza Strip. What did that show you? Well, that shows you that, ladies and gentlemen, the operation failed. How many times do we have to say it? And again, the people will tell you, oh, look, isn't Gaza destroyed? Isn't this destroyed? Look at how many people. Yeah, of course. Again, to cover up the failure, to cover up the fact that there's still fierce, and there will remain fierce resistance against the state of Israel, because the problem is not the resistance. The problem is the apartheid supremacy of Zionism, controlling Palestine through mass-scale terror, sponsored, supported, nurtured, and legitimized by neo-colonial states to this day. And unfortunately, even the talk about the solution and the day after, they are not really talking about the substantial and the most important and crucial points. And the biggest point here is, how can there be a state founded on supremacy, violence, mass expulsion, ethnic cleansing, and genocide in the 21st century? How can a country not have equal human rights? How can a country conduct this now? This is not just an Israeli action here. This is the action of the forces behind Israel. Those who established Israel still nurture and support Israel. And closer to Palestine, those who don't take the action that is required to stop all of this ongoing suffering against the Palestinian people. Now, moving on to the front that has proven to be a front that is unbreakable, that tied its fate with the fate of Palestine, the Yemeni front. Yemen, after they started to conduct attacks on the state of Israel, whether it's through an embargo in the Red Sea, or attacking military bases, or attacking the Israeli air forces, up until we reach today, where they are declaring not only an embargo in the Red Sea, but also an aerial embargo on the state of Israel. They have proven from day one that they act based on principle, faith, and also their humanitarian obligations towards the people facing genocide, when other countries were only condemning and calling for and asking. No, Yemen and Ansarullah, they were taking action. They were taking action according to international law to prevent a genocide as confirmed by the ICJ against a war criminal who is wanted for the ICC, Benjamin Netanyahu. They previously continued to support the Palestinians up until a minute before the ceasefire took effect. In January, they were striking Israel up until the last second. And in their declarations, they were saying that this is in support of the Palestinian negotiator. So they're applying pressure on Israel. Up until the last second to show them that if you're not going to stop, it's not only Gaza you have to deal with, it's Yemen who you have to deal with. So what happened in Yemen in the past couple of days, and what's gonna happen in the future with Yemen? Well, yesterday, while I was actually having a live stream, there was all of a sudden a report, sirens in Israel, and that was, we found out now, an attack coming from Ansarullah in Yemen. At 2 a.m. approximately, there were Houthi shellings on Israel, even after the third wave of attacks in 2 weeks in Yemen. Clearly not fazed these people. IDF spokesperson warned that a launch from Yemen had been detected. And minutes later, alarms were activated throughout the center, from the lowlands to Netanya, basically the majority of the central part of Israel. Several explosions were heard. The army updated that the missiles were intercepted. They were two missiles coming from Ansarullah in Yemen just past midnight against the genocide state. And not only that, they had another declaration earlier on today that we are gonna have actually another operation, ladies and gentlemen, in the next few hours. Expect us. So one of the movement's leaders, Ansarullah, he had a post, and it was also reported on mainstream media as well, that we will carry out military operations against Ben Gurion Airport and other locations in the coming hours due to the escalation in Gaza. And that was from Nasr al-Din Amir, the deputy head of the Ansarullah movement. We will target Ben Gurion and other Israeli airports in the coming hours due to the recent escalation in the Gaza Strip. So whereas, everyone sees, okay, there's talks, there's development, look, something is happening, look, aid is going in. Yemen and Ansarullah, they don't wait and see things happening. They take action. They put their weight in. They put their weight to a level where they split the United States from Israel, at least in relation to the Red Sea. There's no longer a genocide coalition. They broke that coalition. That also shows you that there is, absolutely is, a split, some sort of a split between the United States and Israel, at least in relation to the Red Sea. The United States unilaterally went and spoke with Yemen, and they reached a deal with them, and that deal excluded Israel. How? Well, we're still seeing that. Ansarullah are still imposing an embargo in the Red Sea and are imposing an aerial embargo against Israel without any American action against them. As a matter of fact, the American side is saying that we will only take action against Yemen if Americans are targeted, showing that we are no longer interested in anything that happens between Yemen and Israel. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu went out earlier on today and said that we will fight in Yemen, we will fight other fronts on our own. If the Americans want to join, great, but if not, we will target them on our own. That proves that there is a level of disagreement between both of them. And from a United States perspective, that was bound to happen, because the risk from Ansarullah against the genocide coalition led by the United States in the Red Sea, it took its toll, clearly. It took its toll on all of the American aircraft carriers. And as a matter of fact, it reached a level where, according to national interest at least, Ansarullah almost took down an F-35. The Houthis almost shot down an F-35, and Washington is panicked. This was published 2 days ago in the National Interest, saying that Ansarullah have air defense capabilities that almost put the F-35 at risk of being taken down. Now, we know an F-18 Raptor went down. We know that many MQ-9s, approximately 20, went down, many other UAVs and drones of the United States. And we know that 4 aircraft carriers had to retreat from the Red Sea following attacks coming from Ansarullah in Yemen, showing how effective they are in relation to the attacks that were happening inside of the Red Sea. Therefore, the American administration decided that we can't really have any relation, any tie with Israel, because our forces are now at risk. Firstly, we took serious blows despite the fact that Trump said also we landed severe blows on Yemen, and they bravely went through, brave, he was saying, and that he, trusts their word too. Whereas they didn't trust his word, by the way. Yemen was always saying, if they'll go back, we'll go back immediately. And this man does U-turns, and we're not necessarily trusting him. This proves, ladies and gentlemen, that that disagreement is there, that the Trump effect clearly had something to do with it. The reports that we've been hearing in the past 2 weeks about the American pressure indeed were there. The trip that Donald Trump had, skipping Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, took its toll. We don't know much of what happened in the background, but it's clear that there was a pressure. Benjamin Netanyahu so far decided to submit to the pressure, at least in relation to allowing the aid in, and not through the newly founded Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, meaning a very big U-turn. Aid is going into the Gaza Strip with the previous mechanisms, with the previous aid groups that were operating inside of the Gaza Strip. Now, the big question is, will there be a breakthrough in relation to the ceasefire? This is the million-dollar question. Now, it's past midnight, Palestine time, Qatar time too. The move that did happen up until that ultimatum is, the aid going into Gaza, but a ceasefire an agreement hasn't been made public yet. So is there going to be something? Based on the moves that are coming from Benjamin Netanyahu, there's a very high likelihood. There's a very high likelihood that following this declaration, there will be another declaration. Why? Well, number one, Netanyahu just showed everyone, I did a U-turn. He refused to allow Ben Gvir and others in the cabinet to vote against allowing the aid in the current mechanism, therefore allowing the Palestinian resistance to get aid in and steal the aid, as they claim, right? Then the other statement from Benjamin Netanyahu saying that the discussions in Qatar, in Doha, are also revolving around ending the war. I mean, this should be a bombshell headline everywhere. We are talking about ending the war. The man has said that they're not negotiating an end to the war for all of this time. For the past 18 months, he was saying, no ending the war, no ending the war, no ending the war. Now, all of a sudden, he's like saying, as a humble statement, and we're also talking about Witkoff, and we're also talking about, ending the war, confirming, what we spoke about yesterday about these talks being unconditional talks that are indirect between the Palestinian negotiators and Israel, led by the Qatari mediators. The Qatari mediators were back and forth between each room, between the Palestinian side and the Israeli side. Because, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Israel previously proposed to sit with Hamas directly for talks. But Hamas refused, saying we're not going to sit with them directly. That's why they're having the Qatari mediators. There are very, very big signs that something might be happening, but again, nothing has been reported. And of course, I'll still be monitoring everything from my perspective and giving you the latest updates as and when they happen.